Hey there, and welcome to the podcast Tiling Connect, hosted by Mark Moskwa. This show is designed to connect people with the best information intended to strengthen the business of tiling. To keep up to date with all the episodes, don't forget to subscribe.
Hey everybody, Mark here from Tiling Connect. Welcome back to the program. More importantly, welcome back to another episode. And we have another rock star with us today, which I'm really excited that Peter has decided to come on the show. I met Peter many years ago when he was working as the CEO of Amber Tiles here in Australia. And he's a great guy, and he's going to be talking today. And well, we're going to be talking today a lot about in that leadership space, very much a topic that's close to my heart, and something that I love to be involved in every organisation that I've worked for. But I'm not going to sit here and chew up the airtime. I'm certainly going to pass it over to Peter and say, "Hey, Peter, welcome, and thanks for giving up your time today."
Mark, thank you very much. And I've watched your podcasts, or listened to them and watched them, and looked at all of those great posts on social media that you do, and hat off to you. I was saying before how hard it is to really build great content from the beginning, and you seem to do a great job of it. So thank you, and I appreciate the invitation to come on, and I'm happy to have a talk about leadership because I think it's something that really is important. I guess for some people that know my history, I've been in a lot of different businesses, but I've been in a lot of leadership roles probably for over 30 years. In that time, I've had so many people ask me, what are the things that really make a great leader? It's one of the questions we talked about together, right? And
yeah, exactly.
And I said, well, I was thinking about it today, and what would those things be? Well, I've written a lot about it. I wrote a book on leadership ideas, people and strategy, but I thought about, you've got to be decisive. I think that's a really important thing as a leader. Obviously, you've talked about emotional intelligence in some of your posts a while ago. Resilience, that's something you've talked about as well. I think that's a good one. The ability to inspire people and really have a passion for wanting to develop them. Now, I'm not saying that every CEO, to be a good CEO, you have to be out there and be a passionate people developer, because it's really important that you have team members that want to learn and want to grow, and that's one of the things that you've got to do as a good leader. So I think the last thing, the most critical thing that I think a leader needs to have is a vision, and and that vision really ignites, is the spark that makes all those things, the decisiveness, the emotional intelligence, the resilience, and the ability to inspire and develop people all happen. So, writing about that really challenges my thinking, and it's quite exciting. And I think a lot of CEOs today and a lot of leaders today are facing unprecedented challenges. There's a lot going on, and just from the impact of what's happening overseas, that geopolitical landscape where you've got Trump really throwing everything on its head in the US, and people every day reading about something that's crazy that's going on, and reacting to it a particular way. Well, I guess you've got to see through a lot of that. And even though there may be some negativity about the man, he demonstrates some of these things that I've just talked about in terms of what a great CEO would possess. Now, he has a vision, whether his vision's the vision that everybody wants in the US is one thing, but, he's very decisive. His emotional intelligence, well, we'll leave that for a moment. But
I don't want to upset anybody, but I am a bit of a Trump fan. So there's particular things about him that I'm not in favour of. He's certainly got a very different way of looking at how things should occur within, obviously one of the largest countries in the world.
Yeah, absolutely, and one of the biggest economies. So all these traits I talked about before are things that, even if you're a CEO starting out or a CEO that's already established, they're things that you can still build on and learn, and develop in yourself. So I'm not saying that, to get the tick, you have to have these. You do have to have that get up and go, but these traits can all be developed over time. And if you've got sort of a right team around you, I think that allows you that opportunity to grow with them. But I think the inspiration and the desire to help develop people are probably the things that are critical to driving a good leader forward. Those two things really sort of set the pace for that particular person.
Yeah. Peter, where did it start for you? Like, when you look back on your career today, when did you first get passionate about being in leadership roles, and what did that look like for you at the time?
That's a really good question. I think I got thrust into a role very early. I had a really good sales career as a young guy. I went to university, studied journalism and script writing, marketing, and I went to regional New South Wales to be a cadet reporter. And after 4 weeks, I couldn't see myself being a journalist because the town that they sent me to is very, very quiet. And I think the editor, Tom, at the time, I remember that name very well, he said to me, "Sinodinos, you're going to do the waxing and waning of the moon on page 34 and talk about the tides." And I said, "Well, Tom, we're in an inland town. Why would somebody want to know that?" And he goes, "Farmers, they're all interested in what's going on in the world. So let them know when it's a half moon. Let them know when the high tide's up in the ocean." And I thought, wow, I'm going to really enjoy being based out here for the next 3 or 4 years. So I ended up coming back to the Big Smoke, spoke to my older brother, and he just said to me, "Look, get into a job. You want to write the next great Australian, novel, get in a job, earn some money, go overseas, get some life experiences because you're still young, and off you go." So I went into a retail store, and it's a company called Brushes at the time, and I just said, "Look, straight out of uni, I've got no sales experience. I'm looking for work. Do you have any positions available?" And they said, "Look, we do. You can start in the warehouse, and then, you can move out onto the floor if we think, we're going to keep you." And I was lucky enough. The warehouse was very straightforward. I really enjoyed that work. Did that for 2 weeks, and they were short a salesperson on a Saturday afternoon. They threw me into that. That went really well. And then they put me into full-time sales. And I had 2 years where I just sold a lot of product, met a lot of people, and this is where my life takes a turn. Is they go, "Right, we want you to be an assistant manager of one of our stores in Queensland." At the time, I was in Canberra, and I said, "Look, yeah, it sounds great. Queensland, surf, sun, great place, God's country, all that sort of stuff."
Yeah.
And so they shipped me up there, and there was only one Brushes store at the time, McGregor, and I was to help open up the next 24. But as part of my role, I was an assistant manager, and I was an assistant manager in 3 or 4 stores before they gave me my own store. But here's the kicker, right, Mark? When it comes to leadership and you're a salesperson, you're pretty much a go-getter, and you're chasing the stuff for yourself. The minute you're elevated into a leadership role where you're an assistant manager, it's no longer me, it's all about we. And when the manager's not there, it's all on you. So when you have good team members and good management where they say, the results are based on your success and performance as a people leader, then that really starts to hone your skills. So I quickly learnt that you can try and be a leader from a control and execution point of view, right? That's a very big focus for a lot of new leaders or people that really want to come into a new business and control the situation around them and execute, because, your first 90 days in business, whether you're a new CEO or new leader of an organisation or coming into a new organisation, you want to show either the board or the rest of the management team or your peers, cohorts, whatever it is, that you are every bit that you're being talked about. So those first 90 days are important. So through that management, it shifted my focus from that, not command and control, but control and execution to, hey, now we've got team members. I trust that they can sell. I trust that they can do what they've been paid to do and employed to do. And so that made me have to balance clear expectations with them and help them with that, the vision I talked about earlier, or setting the right vision. What are the results we want? What do we need to achieve? What's going to keep not just the manager happy, the senior management and the national management team happy with our performance? And so we sort of tried to work in a really collaborative way. So that meant, really getting people to understand, when you've got a good team, they sort of sort out a lot of the problems if somebody's not fitting in.
Yeah.
They sort of define if that person's out of sync with everybody else. So that helps you do the number one, probably most important thing as a leader, is having the right people around you. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be the smartest person in the room, because if you're the smartest person in the room, then you're in the wrong room, right? You've heard that. You've heard that before, Mark. So actually having the right people around you is the number one rule, right? And that helped me. I had the right people around me, and that projected me into a national role. And when we were developing stores and opening up 24 stores in it was crazy, 28 months in Queensland. Wow. So we went everywhere from Brisbane right up to Cairns, but every major city along the way. So
I remember Brashen's. What sort of retail store was it?
Well, it had electrical products, TVs. Yeah. I'm going to say a dirty word, video recorders.
Video recorders. It's all right, mate. I remember. I grew up with it still. I might look young, but I'm not.
You're definitely younger than me, that's for sure. And if you're older, you hold it very well, Mark. But yeah, they had those products. They had a lot of accessories, tapes, cables, televisions. They had hi-fi systems, Walkman, all the smaller audio products, microwaves. But that's where it stopped. So it's quite a limited range. But they also had musical instruments, had print music, and pianos, upright pianos and Steinway pianos, which were fantastic. And so, if you were a manager in that business and you're a manager of a flagship store, which I got the opportunity to do because I was there for about 11 years, you get to really work with a lot of different people and also different products, which really helps you with your sales skills, but more importantly, how you lead a sales team that sell different products. A Steinway piano is a $180,000 purchase, and it's not like a Walkman that somebody can sell in 3 minutes. The piano takes probably 4 or 5 visits and a trip for the customer to go to Germany to see how it's made or select the wood, the 80-year-old wood for it, all that sort of stuff. So that was a turning point. Brash's, long story short, I'm sorry about that. That was the turning point because throwing you into the middle of that and then leading people on the sales floor. And then as I got promoted to a store manager and then a regional manager and then a national manager in that business over the 11 years I was there, your dynamics in people management went to another level. It meant you had to show up every day when it was hard, even when it's hard, There's all the difficulty, even the personal hardship you go through, you just show up. You had to learn about your self-awareness, you had to really be out there and, you're on show, a bit like where we're here today, Mark, on your wonderful podcast, but in a retail environment or a business environment, and it doesn't have to be retail, it can be anything, wholesale, it can be real estate, anything, any business, any professional services, you're on show. And so it means when you're turning up, you're performing on stage, and that means that your self-awareness has got to go to sort of another level. There's something called Pareto's rule, 80-20 rule, so 80% of your sales come from 20% of your stock, or 80% of your outcomes come from that 20% that you're focusing on. There's a whole lot of things around that. So there was that. You had to get comfortable saying no. I'm trying to think of all these things as I'm looking up to this mysterious God here, thinking, please give me some more inspiration. But there are things like you have to be able to say no, because when you become a leader, a lot of people want to come into your office and park a gorilla on the end of your table, and they want to say, hey, buddy, can you solve this for me? And then they walk out and leave you with it. So you've got to be able to say, stop, no, what's your solution first? Let's look at that and let's move forward with that. That sounds like a reasonable idea. Or have you really thought that out? Because the ramifications look like this just from what's happened last time.
Well, look, let's fast forward from that time, because I think that's an excellent, share in terms of experience and where it all started for you, and it's certainly a lot of what you've put down and mentioned I can resonate with. I come from a very similar background, probably maybe a little bit of a generation in between us, but certainly, I grew up in a retail environment where I was working in a number of different businesses, whether it be fast food and hospitality or retail clothing, and so I had a bit of a mix of things before I stepped into more leadership roles in retail and things like that. In construction and building landscape background.
Yeah.
You've certainly held, some senior roles in some, incredible businesses over your career, and, well done in doing that, because it's no easy feat. It's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of dedication and perseverance and resilience that it takes to do those sort of positions. I'm keen to know what sort of crucial leadership qualities that you would recommend would separate, a great CEO from an average one. And further to that, how would you develop them?
Well, the emotional leadership, the emotional intelligence factor is probably at the heart of really effective leadership, because that really sets you up to sort of navigate difficult relationships or complex relationships. So, good leadership is all about bringing people along with you in a collaborative way and sharing an experience that they feel they're 150% part of, if not leading.
Yeah.
So it should feel painless if it's happening naturally.
Yep.
Right? If it's not, then you get that friction and the rough edges. Now it's okay to have that friction and the rough edges, right? Because it means that you're growing. That's the critical factor you got to look at.
Yeah.
As long as it's in a positive sense, and there are things like numbers and metrics that help you understand whether your business is winning or losing. But with people, the most critical thing is their contribution and how that emotional intelligence plays into that. And I think it's if you're a great people person, you can navigate almost any problem in business, because most of your issues emanate from people, either highly satisfied people that you need to meet their expectations with. So in your case, Mark, being a great salesperson, you might have people saying to you, how do you see the market and what's your expectations and what are you going to do next? And you suddenly realise you're living up to a reputation. Or how do you get people to understand that and how they play into that? So I think the emotional intelligence is probably the heart of really effective leadership and being able to build strong teams. Because, I've been in some great businesses and I've seen, and I've done it tough, to be honest. There are big CEOs out there, and, we're talking guys that, running corporations and companies like Coles, Woolworths, all those major organisations, and those guys and girls, they have to be tough, and they have to have a set of non-negotiables that a set of values that they work to, and those values need to be really honed in on that emotional intelligence, because you are navigating complexity today. Everything's so complex, so that I think that's the key thing. But I guess lastly, I hope that's made sense to you, but vision, having a really, being able to talk about having that, or being able to give clarity to the vision, why things are done, how people play into that. And that comes back to the emotional intelligence as well, understanding the room. It's a bit like, people are uncomfortable when they come into their room and they crack a couple of jokes that sort of go over like a lead balloon. And I feel sorry for them, even though I go, oh, my God, why did you start with that joke? And probably could have picked your mark, but I don't feel sorry for them. I just have empathy for them, because their intention is to break ice, and, and others might see it differently. But I guess that emotional intelligence is really definitive of effective leadership. But I'm going to say one now that will scare some listeners or some people, but accountability is a massive one. Being able to be accountable and not say things like, well, that's not my job, I don't care about it, or oh, well, you know, it was supposed to go okay, but, you know, if so-and-so hadn't done this or that, you know, and there are different mechanisms in business that allow you to develop that accountability, you know, trusting people and saying this is your role, checking in with them. That's why when you talk about the emotional intelligence being such a strong factor and having a really good, I guess, success-focused mindset, you are always checking in with people, not micromanaging, just checking in a one-on-one and saying, how are we doing, Mark? How are we progressing? Are we sort of getting close to where we want to be, our shared goals? Where do you want to be? How do you want to approach it? How's that looking today for you? So that accountability word starts with the clarity, and that clarity comes from emotional intelligence, all right, and emotional, you know, communication, understanding the motivations of the team. I've probably made it sound very complex, but just understanding people and being a people person really helps. Now, you've got to know your numbers. You've got to be able to pull people up and say, hey, that's BS. Come on. What's really going on?
Yeah, absolutely.
You would have experienced that, I'm sure. Not
of course.
But managing people.
No, absolutely. Look, I believe everything that you're saying has got an incredible amount of merit. And I think emotional intelligence plays an enormous part, whether you're the CEO of an organization or whether or not you're a business owner of a tile contracting business, you're a retail store owner of a tile shop or an associated brand. I mean, you know, no matter what level role you play, emotional intelligence is going to play a big part in being able to connect with your community and your staff and be able to relate to them on, you know, a number of different levels to be able to then provide the support and encouragement that they possibly need. Because, you know, if you don't understand your people, it's going to be very difficult for you to lead them into battle. Because every day in business, there is some sort of battle going on, whether it's positive or negative. There's plenty of battles going on every day. So, you know, you've got to go at it and have a real crack. And I think it's important. So, no, you're certainly making perfect sense in the world of that.
Well, you know, one thing that you've probably, there's some topics that you've covered in your social media posts, that some of them being really great, but one that I was thinking about earlier today before we were going to talk was, leadership's not confined just to the office or to your job. There's leadership that you take with you everywhere, with your family, with your friends, and that stems out of the emotional intelligence we talked about. So think about a tile guy, a PTY Ltd, Mark's Tiles or Mark's ABC Tiling business. Him being able to discuss the customer's needs, the client's needs, direct them to the right store to get the products that he's negotiated a deal with that particular store, or he's able to supply and has a deal, whatever it is, and then completing the job on time, no extra costs because you covered all your contingencies in the beginning, and then something goes wrong and being there straight away, no matter how busy your schedule is, to fix up that. Now, that's true sense of accountability for your actions and what you do, because then you're speaking what you promise in the commitment that you're making to the customer. And I think the small businesses that are successful, the medium-sized businesses that are successful, and the big businesses that are successful are the ones that really take leadership and not confine it to the office, but confine it to their value set and everything that they do around them, and really focus on that. So people aren't disappointed. And, you know somebody's happy when, I call it sort of the blind advocacy starts happening when, I'll quote the dreaded barbecue that everybody quotes, right, Mark? But somebody says, I've got my guy, Mark. He did a cracking job for me. But you know what? For some reason, the piping was all, not because of Mark, he wasn't aware of it, but everything was finished. It was great. We got it all going, and then, we had a problem. We gave the guy one call and he was there within 5 minutes, might have been longer, but, because you don't live around the corner, but he was there, figuratively speaking, in 5 minutes, and he resolved the matter. Didn't charge us anything, did it with a smile, and it was a dirty job. He was here till 2 hours. We felt terrible because, I think he was going out somewhere, but he did it. And you know what? We're going to use him on our next house. We're going to recommend him to you today. We're going to just keep talking about him all the time because he showed us what leadership's all about in his space. Why would we use anybody else than him? So when it comes to leadership, why would we trust anybody else but you? Right? That's something the psychological commitment staff make or team members make to you. Why would we trust anybody else but you? Because we're bought into your vision. You've proven that you give us trust. You keep us accountable, which we feel really appreciative of, even though it stinks sometimes because you pick me up when I'm feeling down. But you let me know when I'm doing well and when I'm not doing so well. And you know what? At least I'm not in the dark and I don't get weird looks, from you and something like that. I know where I stand, and you know what? My commitment is to always be there with you. So when you get that reciprocal, invisible contract between two people, and that comes from that emotional leadership where you really understand your team members and your people, you're flying. Now, I'm not saying you wave a magic wand and do anything like that, Mark. That's hard to do, and that, I think, is the perpetual challenge I've found in my life, because you can be a real focused people person and people don't understand that vulnerability. They think that you may be weak or that you aren't thinking about the business. Well, you are, but you're thinking more about. It's a chain. It's a chain of events. If you're happy, if your team's happy, they're going to look after the customer, right? And if your customer's happy, that's going to look after your business. So
correct.
Why piss them off? Why piss your team members off? Excuse me.
Yeah.
So every transaction's a negative one. So understanding what switches them on. And, if we've got Rolls-Royce performers like yourself, how do we make sure that Mark understands the impact that he has in the business, but we keep it in check so he just keeps performing? And more importantly, understand we'll invest more time in his future because of that, So I hope that sort of gives you a bit of an idea of sort of where my head's on all of that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, look, let's deep dive into some other topics as well, because while I have you, I want to exploit your mind as much as I can.
Good luck.
Keeping it as nice as I can. Exploit in a really positive way, mind you. You've held various, senior leadership roles in the last sort of 10 years, and undoubtedly you've come across some bloody challenging times. There's no doubt about it, because particularly when you're at the top of the tree, you're exposed to everything that goes on in the business, whether, just to coin that phrase, whether you're a CEO of an organization or whether, you're leading a contracting crew on site. The roles are the same. The environment is different. Talk us through, a challenging moment that you've had as a CEO and as a senior leader. Give us one example, and what does that look like, and how have you used all of your expertise to resolve it?
Well, I'll think of one very early on when I was a young manager, and I'll tell you why I pick on this one is that because as you climb the tree, that adversity or that sense of loneliness or being the last tip of the spear, and everybody looks to you. I mentioned earlier some people abdicate their accountability by just coming in and throwing a gorilla on the end of your table. And what you can risk doing if you're in a team that's inexperienced is take some of their work on inadvertently because you're trying to help them and develop them to be better, and that can have a negative effect. So a great experience that I had, I guess, say growing up was while I was in Queensland, because I'm based in Sydney now, I was sent to a store that had, at that time I was, sort of 27 as a young store manager, And I was given a massive store to look after. It was 5 times the size of anything I'd managed before. It was hardcore sales. And the sales team I had were all an average age of 55. So they all had kids, married for most of their lives. They were really stable individuals, but they were hard asses. I didn't have a 2IC because the 2IC quit because he couldn't deal with the team of guys that were there because they literally ran the place. And it was, people would say, oh, you've got the poison chalice. I said, what do you mean by that? Because I try to be a very positive person. There's no poison chalice in our business. It's just another store. It'll be great. The guys are good. We'll get on. We've got, a good mix. We've got more female staff members in this store than we've ever had. It's great. Get a good mix of team and there'll be some great dynamics. Whew. First day, I walked in there and I think the only person that spoke, or 2 people spoke to me, the office manager, and my receptionist. And they're the guys just didn't even acknowledge I was there.
Wow.
So, on leaving, I stood by the door and said, good night, guys. Nice to meet you, and shook their hands. No, they were civil and everything like that. And I said, listen, we've got a team meeting tomorrow morning at 8:30 before we open the doors. Okay, if you guys could come in, that'd be great. 8:30 comes, I've got my evergreen, agenda, young manager, keen to do the right thing. Nobody turns up. They turn up at 5 to 9, go straight out the back, make themselves coffees, have 3 cigarettes before the phones start ringing right on 9 o'clock. And I'm sitting there stressing out thinking, how am I going to get these guys to be really good company team members, because I don't want this store to be my last store. I want to be able to be promoted. Long story short, this went on for about a month and a half. I'd organised meetings. They'd turn up, wouldn't turn up. And so I said, look, guys, this isn't working. And unfortunately, you're stuck with me unless you want to try and get rid of me, which is okay as well. But if you look at my reputation in the business, I've been around for a while and I really want to know, why is it that you don't? And they said, well, you're a young guy. You've come in here. You're telling us what to do. You're telling us to clean up. You're telling us to. And I'm saying, yeah, but, this is all about me establishing what controls I need to put in place and understanding the processes and procedures that we work to so I can finesse them. It's not about a personal thing. They said, well, it's giving us the poops. We really don't want. So, as far as we're concerned, we'll just do the bare essentials. But, we know how the business works. You won't get your numbers and it'll be all over Red Rover for you. And I went, okay, so I'm loved. And
God, that sounds awful already.
Yeah, but so one Saturday afternoon, and the store was really busy. I used to get busy on a Saturday afternoon, and I was on the floor selling, and one of the older guys saw that, and at the end of the day, they used to count up all the sales and everything, and Mandy on the front counter started smiling and laughing. And all the guys, these super big, tough guys, I was a bit lighter back then. They've gone, why are you laughing? And she goes, well, Pete's outsold you 3 times to 1 for all of you guys. And they've gone, no, it can't happen. He can't sell. He's our manager. He's a loser. Managers don't know how to sell. They don't know how to do anything. Just tell you how to do things. And I heard that comment, and I didn't get upset. I thought, great, I've got something. I've got something to work with, because they didn't give me anything, Mark. And I was drowning, I was really fretting about it.
Yeah.
So I said to the guys, listen, I'm going to work with you for 2 weeks straight on the floor. I've got a guy called Jimmy. He's coming in as my 2IC. I know you're going to hate him as much as you hate me, because he's young as well, but he's coming up in the business. He's moving up from Victoria to be in this store with me. And I handpicked him because he's a go-getter. We haven't worked together, but I've heard he's got a great reputation, and he can sell too. So, he's going to be here in a week's time. So I'm going to sell with you next week, and when Jimmy comes, we're all going to sell on the floor together. And my deal is that if I can't outsell you in a week and Jimmy doesn't outsell you guys in a week, right, I'll walk. I'll say to head office, you guys have won. You can go back to sort of Sleepyville. I know it sounds like a cheesy story, but it's true. And then this one guy, Russell, I never forget this guy. This guy, Russell, he was just the ringleader, and he looked at me and started laughing. He goes, oh, you're a doofus. You're going to get done like a dinner. And I said, bring it on. So that first week, I just got ahead of them all. just by a whisker, by about $50. Then when Jimmy came on board, Jimmy was 6 years younger than me. He outsold these guys 2-1, and I was just selling, and we had a great time. We had a lot of fun. And all of a sudden, the guys started to warm up because they'd be listening to the sales techniques that we were trying to promote in the store, and value-added benefits of getting accessories and all sorts of stuff. And Jim was a great salesperson, but we nailed it. And our store made budget for the month. And Jeff Brash visited the store, the owner of the business.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Came in. And these guys had never seen him, but only heard of him. And they said, wow, this. And I said, you guys don't know how good you are. You've spent all this energy trying to resist change when the transformation's in front of you. And if all we have to do is work together, we can be store of the year. And you know what? You get a free trip to Victoria. You get a 1 week's pay. And I said, I guarantee it's not about me. I want this store to go well. I want my career to go well. But, if you guys want to make a ton of money, I'm ready to go for it. And so that comes back to I gave them sales targets. I gave them a vision of what good looks like, what a good sale is. This is what I want in a sale, because if we get that, we'll get our profitability up. And I guess then selling on the floor with them, and I had a lot of managerial stuff I had to do, check the invoices, the margins, because you used to buy product for the individual store as well, so I had to check that, and I was doing that at night. But the time I spent with each one of those guys, I got to know personally. And so this is one of the leadership things, understand your people, understand what they're good at. And there was one guy called Gavin, hated talking to people. Imagine that, but on the telephone, he could sell, I'll use a cliche, ice to the Eskimos, oil to the Saudis, right? So I just said to me, Gavin, we'll direct every sales call to you if you like. Unless you're busy. And
play to his strengths.
Exactly. And that was my next point. You discover everybody's strengths and you focus on that. You don't focus on the weakness. If I'd said to Gavin, you must sell on the floor because you've got to be a salesperson like half the other guys. And what happens slowly by giving these guys opportunities to show what they're about, giving them opportunities to influence the store and the outcome of the store, gave them a reason to feel more part of something great and collaborative. Now we still had like this guy, Russell, who was a resistor, big resistor.
Yeah.
He would circumnavigate the store. He would circumvent things. He'd use SERP deals. So I made the decision, and he was one of the best salespeople. And I said, your culture's not right for our team. I'm happy to send you to another store to be really successful there. I don't want to sack you because it's not my job to get rid of a really top-performing salesperson, but you can't change. I can't change you. So that's my weakness. So I'm willing to – I'm sorry, it's a long story, but it's one that sticks in my head. I know my personal weakness. Let somebody else deal with you, which was back then probably the wrong thing to do, because I should have dealt with it more. But the way I'm going to deal with you, Russell, is I'm going to give you another opportunity to be recast somewhere else where they may appreciate you more than I do, because I don't appreciate you at the moment, and neither do the guys. Even though they all think you're great, I can tell you now they don't like what you're doing. And he goes, BS, you don't know what you're talking about. And then one of the guys said, actually, it's true. You're holding us back. Everything that you've done has just been. So by giving sort of recognising the guy's strengths and working to those and playing to their strengths, putting him in the right position, giving him some numbers to follow and chase, not because I wanted to bounce them off the walls, more so I wanted them to have targets that they could celebrate, because on a Friday night they'd get chips and gravy on a bun and a can of cake from the service station, and we'd talk about our sales numbers and the amount of elation they got out of, making fun of each other about who sold more or less, built that esprit de corps and comradeship. So out of that adversity where nobody wanted to talk to me and thought I stank as a leader, I learned that if I worked with the people more closely, put them in the right position to play the best they can on the field, and then understand the strengths that they had and worked on the strengths as opposed to highlighting their weaknesses, helped me get through that adversity.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a long story. One other one I can think of is having a board where I joined an organisation as a CEO, and having 3 members of the board really like me and 2 members really hate me. So nothing I could do for those 2 could ever satisfy them. So every meeting was adversarial. Every meeting was very negative because they're quite strong in the way that they spoke. But the saving grace was that I had a plan and a vision, and it was well explained, and I would go and anchor back to what were the key things we were trying to achieve in that business. And because they were all financial people and understood the numbers, they understood that the needle was turning in the right way. And over time, just by demonstrating that and doing the right things in the business, getting good PR from franchisees, helping franchisees develop their business more, that board started to turn around. And but that adversity, that kept you up at night trying to win people over like that. So that was really talking them through that. It's very stressful, but who do you talk to? You can't talk to them, even though they're leaders, because they're expecting you to lead, and you can't you might have some confidence, and that's where a mentor is important. So if there's a tiling business or somebody that has a small business, it's good that they have a mentor they can talk to about stuff, and be able to bounce ideas off. So
I think given all of the examples that you've shared, I think one of the hardest things in life and in business and leadership is taking people and pushing them outside of their comfort zone into the uncomfort zone, and taking them on that journey so they understand that they're better off outside instead of inside, because the benefits of being in an uncomfort zone 365 days a year mean that you will live an incredibly prosperous life. Now, it's not going to be comfortable. Life isn't built to be comfortable. It's built to challenge us and all sorts of different things in our pathway for us to grow and to learn. And I think that story that you shared about, staff that saw you as a younger manager, and they've been in the business forever, and they knew everything and learned everything. I've been there before too, and similar to you, beyond a lot of the things that you mentioned, I would challenge staff by setting an example, because they always, particularly back in the earlier parts of my career, people would always look at young managers and go, oh, look, they're just going to come in, they're going to sit in the office, or they're going to be wherever just doing paperwork and pushing people around to do certain things. But when you actually get in there and do the work, and you lead by example and show how well you can do the job, it doesn't take long before they go, oh, this guy actually knows what he's talking about. I need to be careful here. He's not a sheep he's not a wolf in sheep's clothes. He's actually got the goods. So
it's funny, when I think about that example, I haven't talked about that for a very long time because I've been really focusing on stuff. I knew I'd made it, right, Mark, when I'm sitting there and I'm shuffling the papers, and Mandy's saying to me, oh, do you want me to make you a coffee because it's late and you're a bit tired? It's Friday night and it was 10 o'clock and I was knackered, and the guys all had their chips and everything from the van sitting down. I knew I'd made it because one guy came in and in front of me put down a can of Coke, my own roll, my own chips and everything like that. And he goes, that's for you, mate. We've had a great week and thank you very much. I said, oh, you didn't have to do that. And this particular guy, John, said, I'm really loving work. My wife can't believe I'm a different person because we're focusing on so many positive things as opposed to negative things. Yeah, I still get the shits with customers and, they drive me crazy, but I knew I'd made it then, and that gave me confidence. So the point of me saying that is sometimes it's good to look for little markers, as you talked about, to indicate how your path is going. Yep. And if there's positive ones, you're sort of on the right path, if I could say it like that. If there's still a bit of transitional friction, you've got to work harder at it. And I guess that's one thing that I think you talked about. I've got to remember this. This is a while ago when I saw one of your posts, but if you're not continually learning as an individual, it could be really scary what happens to you. Like you're saying, you sort of get stuck behind those that are moving forward, and so my other encouragement for moments of adversity and challenges is, if you're understanding what's happening, try and look at different resources to learn how to overcome it, right? That thing I talked about, your first 90 days in business, when I got shipped to that store, I knew I had to do something in the first 90 days of me being there. And what it was challenging the existing environment. So when you talk about the comfort of being uncomfortable, right, being uncomfortable and growing and going further was a very critical factor in that explanation. And then later on, that sort of set me up to be able to deal with bullies in business and stuff like that really sort of push you around, and you get disappointed through various things that they do. But if you focus on what you're there for, the vision, know how to deal with your own emotions, turn up, always turn up. Try and surround yourself with those really good people. We have a shared future together. You can't go wrong. But it's not easy. No. It's absolutely not easy. And I think a lot of individual business owners would tell you today, it's bloody hard, chasing customers, delivering the services, being on time, just being able to answer the phone.
Yeah.
But I think if you're intense there and the genuine, your real self comes out, I won't use the word authentic because that gets thrown around a lot. I wrote about authenticity a while ago, but just being the real Mark, and bringing that with you everywhere you go in business and in life, I think you can't go wrong.
Yeah, it takes a lot of lessons to learn who you are as a person. And certainly, I listen to a lot of Gary Vee stuff. He's a bit of I aspire to, not be like him, but certainly I aspire to, use a lot of his mannerisms and his experiences in his support and guidance in how to live your life. He's got some really good stuff, and he's very honest. Incredibly transparent, and he does a lot for helping younger people find their way in life, and because I think people get caught up in the whole image versus action side of life. They think the image is the action, but it actually isn't. It's the action that creates the image. And look, it's important. I mean, Pete, I've got to ask. I mean, you spent a few years in the tiling industry, and obviously, I'd be remiss for not asking this question because, Tiling Connect was founded on the 22 years experience that I've had in the building industry, particularly around tiling, stone installation, working for major companies like National Tiles before, setting up, supply and install divisions for tiles in Sydney, and I have a love for the industry, and
it's a great industry.
Absolutely right. It's the bedrock of where I've spent over a third of my life, and I can't say that. No, it's actually half. I'm not that old yet. And mate, tell me when you were working, for Amber, what did you love about the industry? What sort of got you excited about what you saw?
Oh well, not only do you help people. Well, you'd know this from National Tiles and what you do today, but helping people deliver on an aspirational view of their home, because the home's really the definitive example of what people are. It's the definitive example of themselves, right, and their style and everything like that. And somebody that goes to the trouble of spending a ton of money on getting the right furnishings and the right look and feel and the colour. Matching the colours goes beyond, explanation, because there's some projects I saw when I was at Amber that were just unbelievable. The house project that the marketing team worked on that delivered, this unbelievable home on the south coast, from being this sort of weatherboard eyesore to this magnificent, iconic building that had travertine, that had the most beautiful marble tiles you could imagine in the hallway, running straight up to bathrooms that were so well appointed. I'm talking they didn't use sort of 6x9s or 6x6s. They were talking 1.2 metres by 800. There's just opulent look and feel. But I think the thing I really liked most about the industry was the people. I think there are a lot of really, really good people that work hard in the business. And in that business, especially the franchisees, I know some of the franchisees really worked very, very hard. There were a percentage that worked absolutely hard and a percentage that sort of were expecting a lot of it to fall in their lap. And, part of the challenge was to get those people to find a middle ground. So they were working harder, but the rewards are there for them. So being able to see the customers look on their face when, the product was perfect. There were customer problems, of course. Being able to resolve those was great as well because they gave you an opportunity to resell to them. So, if you handled that right, they'd come back to you because as much as they got annoyed with you, well, you solved the problem, so we're going to give you another go to prove that it was just, an abomination that nobody expected or whatever. But I think the people were – sorry, go on.
No, I was just saying, sorry to interrupt. It's amazing how many people don't realise and understand how much reward you can actually get, not just emotionally and satisfactorily from a bad customer experience, but also that, you're going to turn that customer into a repeat customer. And so many people forget that, whether you're working in retail or whether, again, just transcending this to a job site, when you have a problem, face it head on and work on resolving it. Don't run away from it because the reward is, the learning and the experience from a terrible or shitty experience is incredible. And you get to treat, you get the opportunity to make that customer a repeat customer by coming back to you again because you solved it. The minute you don't do that, they're gone forever. So
it's funny. I had an experience, and the franchisee will never know. And I'm not going to go into the exact details, but a customer called up one night into the office, and it was probably about 6:30, and everybody literally in the business had, all the guys in the warehouse had gone. I was just finishing some paperwork, and it's funny, people say, don't pick up the phone if it starts ringing after 6:30, and I thought, it might be my wife or something like that. It was a customer, and they had some travertine pavers that they bought from us, and the guy laying the pavers was still working at the customer's home, and it was daylight saving, so they could see the coloration of the stone. And out of 14 pallets, 2 had damaged or discoloured 6x9. Sorry, not 6x9. I've got to remember now. 2x4 was a particular 3x6. Anyway, these pavers were discoloured because the wood in the actual crate, they'd had wood separating some of the layers as they put them in. And because of the dampness of this particular pallet, some of that coloration had gone because they hadn't sealed the rock, right, before they put it down. So they called me and said, you've given us faulty product and we want to, typical fashion, want to pull it all up and get our money back or do something like that. And I've gone, well, wait a second. Let's talk about this. Let's try and work out what's going on. What's the problem? Well, our guy's saying that 2 pallets of these stones are discoloured. And I said, let me jump in my car and I'll drive out and see. And they say, are you crazy? And I said, no, I'm in the office. I just jumped in the car. Drove out to the customer's home. It was, a 45-minute drive. This guy had done beautiful work, but he was right, 2 of the pallets were average. And I said, can you work with some of this stuff? I can see that some of the offcuts haven't been used yet for some of the edging that you want to do. Can you use some of this? And he goes, yeah, I can, but there's still, 30 pieces that need to be replaced. I said, it's not a problem. I'll get it done for you. If you could progress, because the customer wants the job finished, and I'll get it sent over in the morning. So sure enough, I sent it over, got it there on time. The guy was waiting. He was happy, finished the job, gave me the product to take back on the truck, and it was really terrible stuff when everybody inspected in the office. Anyway, the customers were so happy with our service or just somebody going out and seeing that late. And so was the tradie that they actually sent a check into the office about 2 weeks later.
Oh, really? Wow.
Saying here's the because you gave us some extra pavers and you mentioned the price of the discounted price. So, we want to, it's a mistake, but we realised that, it was after hours and blah, blah, blah. That check wasn't much, but it was representative of a happy customer, right? Because they didn't have to pay anymore.
Yep.
So, that went to the franchisee store. That sort of stuff, write about. You just do it because you want the business to have that, the reputational impact of doing good things like that are really important. And, that customer recommended 4 or 5 people to us. And so that $280 worth of fix-ups ended up being, I think about 18,500 in sales to this particular franchisee who ended up understanding what had happened and was thankful for it. So that's how you work with your franchise businesses. But, you don't – we can talk to you about it and maybe somebody will figure out what it is. But that all comes back to if you have a set of values that you follow about collaborative work, being true to yourself in terms of your collaborative nature with other people that you work with and trying to build a vision of what you're about, you can't go wrong. And that's what every small business, you won't win every day in a small business. You won't win every day in a medium business because people are very interesting individuals. You know that better than me, Mark, being the great salesperson you are. But if you can be consistent in your actions, I think that gets you a long way ahead of the next guy who just gives up and doesn't care and works on numbers. I'll get the next one. I'll get more out of the next one. Or Australia's a small place and there's diminishing value in working those numbers out when you piss too many people off and soon the word gets around and you don't have a business, right?
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. Peter, I couldn't agree more. And I think just as we wrap up today, what's sort of one last bit of advice that you would give an aspiring leader, a lasting legacy in their role and what they're doing in business? What would you say to them?
A lot of what we've said before, but I'll try and distill it down to a few things. Focus on continuous learning, right? Always try and learn more and more about people that you deal with and people just generally. Work on your self-awareness, really focus on how you portray yourself. It can be as simple as you're on the telephone. You were talking to a potential client or a customer and then the telephone rings. You pick up the telephone. It's a very old thing. Your mobile phone, and you take that call while you're mid-sentence with the other one. Means that you don't respect them. So that's self-awareness, knowing when to, excuse me, this is a very important call. I need to take it. Actually, I don't need to take it because I'm with you, that sort of stuff. People first leadership. Lead through people. Numbers are important, absolutely 150%. Numbers are it. But lead through the people you have. Sometimes you need to reset their expectations or reset some of the team to have the right people around you. Emotional intelligence we talked about in detail. I banged on too much about that.
No, you didn't. It's all good.
Try and surround yourself with good people, Mark, like you do, and I think if you do that pays you forward. And lastly, integrity and transparency. That helps you build a legacy for sure. Do those things. So to remember that continuous learning, self-awareness, people-focused leadership. Develop a strong understanding of the business you're in, the industry you're in, like you do, right? The construction industry like the back of your hand. Understand the industry you work in because then that'll help you navigate a lot of stuff. And I think everything else I've mentioned works in your favour.
Peter, there's just been absolute gold from start to end today with regards to everything you've shared with us. And this sort of topic leadership and being a CEO in businesses and management and that, this could be a series of many episodes. So we've certainly jammed in quite a lot of information today, and I really appreciate your time. I had some amazing communication with you and collaboration with you when you're at Amber, and I'm glad that we could get you on today and to share some of your experience, because there's a lot there. And so thanks for coming on today. And like we always like to finish off all our shows, until next time, stay connected. But certainly, big thanks, and we can't wait to get this out to the community and share some of this with them, so they can adapt some of what they're doing today and fit some of the Peter Sinodinos skills into their work life.
Look, Mark, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I am very passionate about people being the best version of themselves that they can, because then, people buy people, then they buy product, right? So if you're the best version, off you go. I've really enjoyed my time. I'm sorry if I banged on a little bit about the past. It's not about when we were this or when we were that. It's just they were defining moments in leadership that really taught me that being with people and helping people grow is critical. So I wish you all the best, Mark, and we always keep in touch. But you are a doyen of the industry, and doing something like this just shows how much you love it, how much you care about it, because I know you do this off your own bat, and that is one hell of a thing to do, and you do it really well. So thank you, sir, and look forward to crossing swords with you again in the future.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Tiling Connect. Don't forget to rate and review this podcast. To see more of Tiling Connect, jump on our socials and follow us via LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. If you'd like to be part of the show, email us at tilingconnect@gmail.com. Until next time, stay connected.